So there are a lot of books about how to be a better conversationalist, how to win friends and influence people, and a lot of them offer a lot of technical advice on how you could structure things you say or ask questions to seem interested in the other person, which is good advice because most people have a huge issue in listening to another person for more than like 10 seconds before they enter that mode of listening or waiting for themselves to have a chance to talk. So that's all true. But it's just occurred to me recently that there's not a shortcut to being interesting or good at talking. And though you should learn a lot of other skills so that things you say are interesting, you leave room for the other person, you give them opportunities to talk and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you have to make yourself interesting by actually doing interesting things, which seems obvious, but it's not obvious, at least in the way that it kind of struck me finally, not directly in the context of conversation, but in writing. Think about how hard it is to be an important or great writer if you do nothing but stay in your house and you never leave it and you don't talk to anyone. There are writers that are great writers that basically did that. The one writer, Marcel Proust, the last years of his life, he just stayed in his room and did nothing but write. Given he was writing about his life, but his life was not he didn't go off to war. He lived a very mundane day-to-day existence. The reason his books are amazing is because of the insane level of detail and skill he applies to the daily life to make it interesting. But then on the other hand, if you go to a war zone, you don't have to be a genius or a literary stylist to make your writing interesting. You just need to write about what you're seeing. If you went to Ukraine right now, you would basically automatically be an interesting writer just because you have access to that information that other people care about and that is part of the world that people want to better understand. Whereas if you stay in your room all day, you need to be a literary genius to make that work. And it's the same with conversation. If you have actually lived an interesting life and gone and done things most people haven't done, then if they ask you, oh, what'd you do yesterday? And you actually did something yesterday that's interesting, those technical conversational skills and the kind of Dale Carnegie style advice doesn't factor in as much as long as you're doing the basics of making eye contact, listening to the other person, not just being boring and monologuing and all that. And it goes for not just what you did in the micro, on the day-to-day, but in the macro of what you did last year, what you're planning to do. But the trouble is, if you're doing what other people are doing, why would they want to hear about it? If you just watch Netflix and they watch Netflix, they know what that experience is like. And unless you're being funny and relating about the weird things about that most people don't notice, it's hard to make it interesting because it's they already know all about watching Netflix. You already know all about it. It's the same for going out too. They all know what it's like to get drunk with a group of friends. Unless you're being literary in the sense that you can pull out great details and humor in the story, which is another set of skills, the story needs to just be interesting in and of itself. So I think this is really good advice for people that want to develop better social skills, but they just look at themselves honestly and they know oh, I'm not funny. Some people are just not born with that, and that's fine. There are lots of people that aren't naturally charismatic or funny that are still interesting and people love being around them. But in a certain sense, you need to deal with that by just having interesting content to say, because there are way too many people out there that are not funny, not charismatic. They don't do anything interesting. They don't notice weird things about the world. They don't ask weird, interesting, rare questions. And so if those people struggle socially, it's not because they have any deep issue. It's just that they have nothing that other people can latch onto and engage with. So if that's you, and it's all of us sometimes, all of us have had nights, I think, where we feel boring. You maybe need to restructure your life and plan to do things, not just so you can be interesting, do them for yourself, but do the most interesting things you as a person might want to do. So if you're an athlete, do that thing that most people dream about but haven't done. Or if you're a traveler, travel to that country that isn't just the Eiffel Tower that everyone has heard about and isn't that interesting to talk about. Yep, it's the Eiffel Tower. You don't want to be like that. You want to have the story about going to Kabul and, buying a rare, I don't want to say gun, but going to a crazy country, doing something interesting. Take the YouTuber Bald and Bankrupt. There's so many people on YouTube doing selfie recordings of them traveling. Yet that guy gets like 3 million views a video, has like an insanely loyal following. When he does something, it sometimes makes international news because he's doing something that no one else has to do. So he doesn't need fancy edits. He doesn't need to be like a comedic genius. He just needs to go do the thing other people haven't done. And bam, he's interesting. Bam, he's a good conversationalist. So that was just been on my mind today. That's all.